The sea was restless. The night everything changed. Waves slammed against the dark cliffs like a warning from the ancient world itself. People in the coastal towns whispered that the ocean could sense war before men ever did. And on that cold, trembling shore, a young engineer named Alina felt the truth of it. She stood alone on the cliff's edge, staring into the blackness where the Empire's ships vanished each night, swallowed by storms and enemies. Alina had grown up with the sea as her closest companion. It taught her to listen. It taught her that light meant life. Her father, before he died, had tended the old lighthouse, a broken tower the Empire ignored. But he always told her, if the light ever goes out, the world loses its way. She didn't realize then how literal that warning would become. For years, enemy fleets had attacked the coastline under the cover of night, moving like shadows across the water. The Empire's ships were powerful, but blind in darkness. Every night more vessels disappeared, more soldiers drowned, and the people lost hope. The Emperor ordered new strategies, new weapons, new generals. But none of them understood the darkness the way Alina did. One night, as the sky cracked open with lightning, a battered warship limped into the harbor carrying news that chilled the Empire. The enemy was preparing a final attack. One massive fleet approaching under a moonless sky. The Empire had days, maybe hours. The generals argued, the Emperor raged, but no one had a solution that could stop ships they couldn't see. Except for Alina. She walked into the War Council chamber with storm water still dripping from her clothes. Soldiers laughed, advisors sneered, but she looked the Emperor directly in the eyes and said something no one had ever dared to say. Your war is lost unless you let me build a line of lighthouses. The silence that followed was heavy enough to stop the rain. She unrolled for plans, a chain of tall towers built along the cliffs, each synchronized to ignite at the exact same moment, creating a blazing path of light across the sea, not just to guide the Empire ships, but to expose the enemy fleet as they approached. It was bold, it was impossible, it was madness. The Emperor leaned forward. How long would it take? Alina took a breath. 3 nights. The council erupted, shouting that she was delusional, that it would take months, that no one had the skill or manpower. But the Emperor saw something in her eyes, the same fire her father once carried as lighthouse keeper. He gave her permission, and the greatest race against time in the Empire's history began. Alina gathered workers, engineers, carpenters, fishermen, anyone who knew how to climb a cliff, carry a beam, swing a hammer. Day and night they toiled under storms, winds tearing at their clothes, waves exploding at their feet. The cliffs shook, the sea roared. But Alina stood on the jagged edges, shouting instructions over the thunder. By the end of the first night, the foundation of the towers rose like skeletal giants along the coastline. By the second night, lantern chambers were built, mirrors mounted, fuel barrels hauled up slippery stone staircases. Men collapsed from exhaustion. Women worked with bleeding hands. Alina didn't sleep at all. Her voice grew hoarse, but her determination sharpened. On the dawn of the 3rd day, a scout arrived, breathless, white-faced. They're coming, he gasped, an entire horizon full of ships. Alina looked past him toward the ocean. Even through the early fog she could see dark shapes moving, dozens, then hundreds. The enemy fleet had arrived much sooner than expected. They had only hours left. The workers panicked. Some wanted to flee inland. Some said the towers weren't ready. But Alina climbed the tallest one, stood at its peak, and shouted across the wind, "We finish now or everything you love will burn." Her words hit harder than the storm. A surge of courage rolled through the workers, and they pushed themselves beyond human limits. They tied ropes with shaking fingers. They lifted beams with aching arms. They climbed cliffs slick with seawater. And as the sun slipped beneath the horizon, the last mirror was finally mounted. The coastline was ready, but the timing had to be perfect. If the lighthouses ignited too soon, the enemy would change course. Too late, and the Empire's navy would be caught blind. Alina waited at the central tower, watching the ocean. She could feel the darkness tightening like a fist. The enemy ships blended into the night, invisible except for faint ripples where they split the waves. She held her breath. Lightning flashed far in the distance, for a heartbeat revealing the massive fleet creeping towards them, like a black army of shadows. That was her moment. Alina raised the ignition torch. "Now!" she screamed. All along the coastline, runners lit the fuses. Fire streaked across the ropes like veins of gold. And one by one, the lighthouses roared to life. Boom, boom, boom. Explosions of blinding light bursting open the night. The entire sea turned to daylight. The Empire's cliffs glowed like a string of suns. The mirrors amplified the beams, cutting through fog, storm, and shadow. And the enemy fleet, once invisible, was suddenly exposed, caught in a trap they never saw coming. Panic erupted among their ships. Captains shouted, oars clattered. The illusion of darkness was gone. And from behind the cliffs, the Empire's navy, which had been waiting silently, surged forward like a tidal wave. Guided by the light, their ships sliced through the water with deadly precision. Flaming arrows soared, cannons exploded, steel clashed. The sea became a battlefield lit brighter than morning. The enemy never had a chance. They steered blindly, crashing into rocks revealed by the light. Their formations broke. Their command ship turned too sharply and split against a hidden reef. Everything they had built their confidence on, stealth, darkness, fear, crumbled. Alina watched from her tower as the Empire's ships drove the invaders back, one blazing strike after another. The Empire had been on the edge of extinction, and now, under the glow of her creation, it rose again, fierce and unstoppable. By sunrise, the ocean was quiet. Smoke drifted on gentle waves, and the first rays of real daylight touched the towers that she had built. When the Emperor arrived at the cliffs, he found Alina still standing in the wind, exhausted, eyes red, clothes torn, but alive. He bowed to her. No emperor in history had ever bowed to an engineer, let alone a woman from a forgotten lighthouse family. But he lowered his head and said, "You saved an empire with nothing but light." But Alina shook her head. "Not light," she said softly. "People. People who believed." The Emperor smiled. "Then let the world know your name." The towers became a symbol of hope, a chain of guardians along the coast, and Alina became the Empire's chief master of engineering, teaching generations how one spark can turn the tide of war. Years later, when travelers sailed past those cliffs at night, they often saw a figure standing at the highest tower, watching the waves. Some swore it was Alina. Some said it was her father's spirit. Others believed the sea itself was guarding her legacy. But one thing was certain. As long as the towers burned, no darkness, not storms, not enemies, not fear, could ever swallow the Empire again.